Hello, people of the internet. My name is Catherine Beck, and I am a music student at the University of Cincinnati. I hope everyone that is able to stay indoors during this time continues to do so, and you are all taking the necessary precautions to keep yourselves and your loved ones safe and healthy. Here in the United States, social distancing protocols and stay-at-home orders have been the focus in combating this virus, and what suffers greatly in this time of separation is our ability to gather as a community. But as I see people give me dirty looks at the grocery store, or videos of violent attacks against other Asian people on the internet, I begin to wonder exactly how united we had been before the pandemic. Asian Americans are in the midst of experiencing an increasing number of racially motivated hate crimes, in addition to smaller xenophobic remarks due to the rise of COVID-19. People, major media sources, and our current presidential administration have racially targeted Chinese and Asian American populations of not only being carriers of the virus, but also being foreigners. As the first cases of COVID-19 were reported in Wuhan, China, our president self-named the virus the Chinese virus or the Wuhan virus a month ago now, and it is reported a White House official referred to the virus as Kung Flu. This targeted racist language demonstrated by elected officials of the United States indicates not just the presence of racism, but an established tolerance of racism, still pervading our institutions and our society today. But this issue of xenophobia and othering has been around for centuries, targeting immigrant populations and communities of color ever since the conception of this country. We can see the concept of yellow peril seen in the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, the government's first piece of legislation barring immigration of a specific community of people. The fear of foreign invasion pervaded the culture when the white working class labeled Chinese laborers as the cause of economic downturn and declining wages of the time. Another example of this racial targeting is 9/11, where there was an alarming rise in hate crimes in the Muslim Arab and South Asian American populations. This racial targeting of minority communities in times of crisis shows that it is woven in our social fabric to scapegoat and blame entire communities of people for the plight at hand. When the president uses this divisive language, he shifts our attention away from his weak response to the pandemic. He refuses to accept responsibility for exacerbating a problem that could have been contained. When the president uses this racist language, he divides us and ultimately leaves us fighting amongst one another. When he uses this racist language, he signifies to the people that racially targeting communities is still okay, when it never was. We cannot continue this way, and we cannot progress this way. But how do we continue? As we have been hearing ad nauseum for the past few weeks, the answer is together. We don't need another lecture on the importance of unity at this time, but let me just tell you this. According to contemporary philosopher Miranda Fricker, ideas expressed in a group culture setting, such as your workplace environment or your college atmosphere, can seep into your own actions positively or negatively. For example, let's say you genuinely believe that women should be allowed the same opportunities as men. But in your workplace or friend group, small jokes about a woman's place in society or slightly misogynist remarks on women's appearances are accepted and even welcomed. Now, if you don't participate, you can be seen as someone not joining in that group culture. The clues of being excluded can range from subtle to extremely obvious. But the innate human quality to want to fit in and be accepted calls you to make a choice. You may make a sexist joke when you don't really mean to or want to, or risk being rejected from this group for either speaking out or not participating in the joke. The phrase, "it's just a joke," may call you to brush it off. And with that, this casually sexist mentality becomes a norm of this group. The influence of a group culture can be coercive and powerful, and I believe can be utilized in much better ways. If our society and institutions enforced an actual zero-tolerance culture of racist language, not just policies, the expectation for everyone's behavior is automatically raised when, as a collective, we reject the prejudices against all groups, and we support those groups still affected by those prejudices today. The privileged class and those that support them are able to succeed because the system enables them to thrive, while those that are disenfranchised cannot even be heard. Fricker recognizes this as hermeneutic injustice, where certain groups are excluded and silenced because they aren't understood by the vast majority, therefore misunderstood. We need to demand changes to help all of us, not just some of us. We need to recognize our differences and establish our own systems and networks that are inclusive of communities of color and communities that need to be heard. And we can begin this process of transformation in our homes today. We can learn from our mistakes, and right now we are dealing with the aftermath of a huge one. Our own prejudices and internalized racism inform our judgments in more ways than we realize, and we can start by recognizing when we may be judging someone or treating someone unfairly. I've begun to notice small things in my life. Earlier in the fall, my friends and I started to teach music in a lower-income community of Cincinnati. The first time we drove through that part of the city, I noticed more homeless people, people of color, and rundown buildings. As we kept driving through the area to find the building, my one friend said that the area looked sketchy. It may be a very trivial remark, but I feel like there's a bit to unpack in that statement. I look back and think about what that community might be going through. In calling the area sketchy, she generalized and dismissed the experience of those in the community that are affected by systemic injustices. In that moment, I didn't say anything to her about it. But in taking time to reflect on experiences like this, I now see I should have said something to my friend about generalizing an entire community's experiences. In the moment, I should have said, this is a community that doesn't have the same resources that we have. Acknowledging these biases doesn't change the state of that community right away, but it can motivate me to begin taking action in the community in any way I can. What I ask of you is this. Reflect on your own place in society and the level of privilege that may come from that. What am I able to access that others can't? Recognize the judgments you have of other people, and take notice when those judgments seem to generalize and stereotype people. When we take the small step to reflect on our own biases and judgments, we are a small step closer in allowing other people true equal opportunity. Now, I do understand that people of color experience varying levels of injustice. And as a Korean American woman, there are particular institutional injustices that do not affect me, but do affect other communities of color. But now, in light of COVID-19, Asians are being racialized as Chinese and targeted directly because of their appearance. We cannot think of this being an isolated incidence of racism. Vices such as police brutality, mass incarceration of black men, and now the targeting of Asian individuals are all a result of a long history of blaming low-income communities for crime and immigrants for taking jobs and bringing disease. We cannot afford to fend for ourselves in our own community anymore. We cannot afford to continue to blame each other for issues much bigger than us. Every single person is vulnerable to the pandemic, but we have to acknowledge that there are people that need more help. Frontline healthcare workers, those that are without work, and especially those in lower-income communities. I know we want everything to go back to normal after these distancing protocols are lifted, but we need to think about how we got into this position of vulnerability in the first place. We cannot simply go back to normal, and it should not take another global crisis to lend out a helping hand. We need to support each other, fight together with all hands on deck, especially when other minority communities are facing unjust discrimination. My hope is that once we emerge from physical distancing, we will continue to support each other at a higher capacity, interact with new people, welcome other cultures and their histories, and connect with those that need help in our communities. My hope is that we start to combat these racist generalizations and mindsets by taking small steps toward true unity and acceptance of our differences. And with that, I thank you for listening and spending your time with me today. I encourage every one of you to do one thing to create positive change today, whether that be donating to a local hospital or nonprofit organization, or to just stay at home. So stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.